Hey, what's up guys? In this video, I'm going to be showing you the ways I've used to successfully complete and expedite Kuvara stages 13 and 15 with Jinsung and Valkyrie. Before we start, let me just tell you, this is not going to be like Viol Valkyrie for Salamander. You're going to struggle to even clear Kuvara 13 with level 90 units, so we're going to need heavy investment into both Jin and Valkyrie. This is also not like my Viol Valkyrie guide in the sense that I can't just tell you, oh, just run X set and X Relics and you can clear the stage. The requirements for this is going to be a lot higher, and it's a lot more complex than just setting your units in the right position. If you're new, don't have the resources needed to invest in Jin's gear, or you don't have the dupes to star him up, I would advise you not to attempt this, as you're going to waste your resources, unless you want to just manual, which actually makes any stage a lot easier. Clearing Kuvara is going to require you to be decently knowledgeable about the game, because you're going to be testing a lot of different builds on your own, unless you're just insanely strong and can brute force your way through. Keep in mind that this strat is pretty new during this time this video will be released, meaning that there may be different ways to do this, so if you have ideas different than mine, don't be afraid to test them out. Now first, I'd advise you not to attempt anything without watching this whole video, so don't touch your Jin, his levels, or his awakenings. I'm going to be giving you all the information I've found testing things myself. If you're watching this, I'm going to assume you know what both Valkyrie and Jin do and why they're good for Kuvara. But just to recap, Jin is good because of his passive, which allows him to clear the poisons Kuvara is going to inflict when it counters him. Now let's go ahead and get to the main point. The most important part to clearing Kuvara 13 to 15 is all about how you manage Jin's passive, specifically his damage immunity. Something interesting is that if he got nerfed and this part of his passive was removed, he would be the perfect DPS unit for Kuvara. If Kuvara counters Jin and he has his damage immunity up, he gets poisoned and he won't be able to cleanse it because he didn't take damage equal to 20% of his HP. If Jin is poisoned and Kuvara does its chain 3 move, your Jin is just going to get straight up obliterated. The 3 methods I'm going to show you is all about ways to build around this. For the first way, we're going to be using what I call the Besties Method. Jin is going to be in the 3rd slot and Valkyrie in the front. For this to work, we're going to need to have Besties on Jin. In this method, the way we work around his passive is by making sure the only enemy that hits Jin in the boss round is Kuvara. This works because the adds in the boss stage hit only units in the front. The idea for this method is that Jin is going to attack first, get countered by Kuvara, which procs his passive, then a minion is going to attack Valkyrie and pop Jin's damage immunity from the Bestie's damage sharing. Only after that is Valkyrie going to use her heal. And no, Jin can't move second, because if Valkyrie moves first, she's not going to take any damage, which means that there's no damage to share with Besties. Some things to note about this is that Jin is going to take a full counter without Valkyrie's damage reduction buff. Jin isn't going to be healed from Kuvara's counter since he moves before Valkyrie. If there is no add alive, Jin's damage immunity isn't going to be popped, and it's all up to RNG whether Kuvara is going to C3 Jin when he has poisons or not. Even if an ad is alive, because Jin moves first, he might kill the ad before it can attack. I've personally used this method to successfully clear and expedite stage 13 and 14. One thing we'll talk about later is how which stage you're doing is going to affect how effective a certain method is. Now to the next one. For the second way, we're going to use the health tuning method. This time, Valkyrie is going to be in the 3rd slot and Jin in the front. For this, we're going to need a calculator and notepad. In this method, the way we work around his passive is by making sure that only Kuvara can proc it. In other words, we're making sure only Kuvara can do damage to Jin exceeding 20% of his max health. This method is the reason why I said not to touch Jin's level or awakenings. We're going to be incrementally increasing Jin's stats according to the data we're going to collect. You're going to have to go do a regular run with the gear you have and take note of certain things. Also, when I talk about ads, we're only concerned with ads in the boss stage. The things you need to note are damage Kuvara does on a counter when it doesn't crit, damage Kuvara does on a counter when it crits but you block the hit, damage ads do on their 2 chain when it crits. So what you're going to do is that you're going to build Jin's gear around the data we have collected. Take the damage the adds do and multiply it by 5. This is going to be approximately the minimum amount of HP Jin needs. Now take the damage Kuvara does to you and multiply it by 5. This is going to be approximately the max amount of HP Jin can have. Now with the gear you have, you're going to try to get Jin's HP in between these two values while still having enough damage to clear the stage. One thing I did that I probably wouldn't recommend you to do is that I recalled Jin. I had him at SSS max level and I couldn't do Kuvara 14 with the artifacts I had. At the time, I thought Kuvara 15 was impossible, and I didn't want to try to level other artifacts to get shafted by RNG. I went to his awaken tree and only got the offensive awakenings and skipped as much defensive ones as I could. I put his gear back on and tested what happened at level 90, took note of the damage values they were doing to me, and leveled Jin to adapt to the amount of HP he needed. If you're gonna attempt the health tuning method, I do highly recommend that you skip all the block chance awakenings in the tree. You can get every offensive awakening while only having 6% block chance from the tree. The only caveat to this is that if you want a SSS Jin, you're gonna have to recall him to do so without having the block chance awakenings. Things to note about doing this method is that if there is no ad alive, it's all up to RNG whether Kuvara is going to C3 when Jin has poisons or not. Jin won't proc his passive if Kuvara doesn't crit and Jin blocks the hit. This is why we don't want block chance, so avoid it in your artifacts as well. Guild HP buff exists. Make sure you know if your guild runs this buff regularly or not, and test your builds accordingly, because this can easily mess up your runs if you have it up one day and down on another. I use this to clear both Kuvara 14 and 15, and it's what I'm currently using to get my 20-minute expeditions for stage 15. For our last way of clearing Kuvara, it's to just use brute force and win with pure stats and strong relics. Now this one is pretty self-explanatory. The way we work around his passive here is by not doing it at all and just straight up tanking Kuvara's damage. It's actually pretty easy to tank Kuvara C3 even with poisons, at least for stage 13. If you plan on using this to do higher stages though, you're going to need some pretty insane gear and strong relics. Some things to note are that being too tanky is actually a thing, and that Valkyrie will take damage here, so you might want to mix in a Guardian set in her gear. Now I don't have much experience trying this method out, but something I would recommend is to put Jin in the front with a For the Good 10 relic to take away as many poisons as you can. Just remember that there's no set position you need to put your units in to do this. You can experiment with both Jin being in the back attacking first, or being in the front attacking last. It's actually pretty easy to clear Kuvara 13 with this, but I'm pretty sure I would die instantly in 14 and 15. However, that's not to say that it's impossible. I'm pretty sure someone cleared all Kuvara stages by brute forcing it with both a SSS Jin and RN. There's actually a fourth way of clearing Kuvara, and it's by pure luck. Without following this guide, a build you have might just get perfect rotations of Kuvara countering you and proccing your passive at the exact right times. This is going to be most applicable to Kuvara 13, and it's actually not too uncommon to find a build that works like this. When I was first testing out a bunch of gear on Jin, the first time I tried clearing Kuvara, quite a few of these builds actually ended up being like this. Now let's talk about gear. One thing most of your gear sets is going to have in common is that Jin is going to need to be built decently tanky. This means using a Phoenix artifact. Now I highly recommend you to use a Hand of Ignis that gives damage boost on bosses. Because we're using defensive gear, we're going to need all the damage we can to make sure we don't hit the turn limit. If you have a Destruction Phoenix artifact with a damage boost on boss, that's going to be great. Now, if your Jin is overstated for the stage you're doing, you can probably get away with running 2 Salamander artifacts instead. For example, with my SSS level 105 Jin, if I were to clear Kuvara 13, I would switch to that set instead. There's not much else I can give you in regards to your gear, just that we want to be tanky enough while still dealing enough damage, so you probably want to run a destruction set. It's definitely not needed though, as I've expedited Kuvara 15 with a 3 Vit and 3 attack set. Alright, onto our relics. For damage, we have a pretty limited amount of options. The main offensive relics would be Dawn of Retaliation, Double Dragon Kick, and Goblin King's Pendant. Huarian Invocation may be good for Kuvara 13 since there's only one ad that revives at 3 different HP thresholds. For defensive relics, we have Besties, Fruits Party for Hate, Peach Grill Party, For the Good Tan, Blue Dragon Reflex, Binge, and Hate's Munch Munch. We also have Going at Full Speed, which could be pretty interesting since it enables Jin stuns. This isn't necessarily a good thing because we generally don't want to stun the ads, but we probably won't have enough debuff accuracy anyways, and one ad does give itself debuff immunity. Before we go on to our next topic, let's quickly go over Valkyrie's gear. In general, we just want to build her with the most HP as possible. So to remind you, a 3 SS Resist and 3 SS Guardian set is going to give us the most HP. We probably won't have that, so the next best combination is going to be 4 SS Vit and 2 S Vit. Now these aren't always going to be the best set for you, and it all depends on how your artifact rolls go. Don't be afraid to use a broken set, because some set bonuses don't give us HP, and that's all we care about. Good options for relics is anything that increases her HP, and her personal relic is great for that. You also have Fever Time, and Besties is pretty good if it's at a high level. Now let's talk about relic slaves. I think this is going to be a very important aspect for Kuvara that's going to make or break your runs when you do higher stages. These relics have the potential to give huge buffs to both Jin and Valkyrie. Relic slaves may also free up a relic slot on your units. For example, you can use Fever Time on a level 1 unit and give Valkyrie a different relic that gives her more HP. Since Jin is a light martial artist unit, we're going to have a very high amount of options. These include the Revolution, Fever Time, Blue Dragon Reflex, Sage of the East, Notice of Crime, Monkey Kling's Splendor, the God Chaser, Master of the Throne, and the Master's Sense of Duty. Besties is also great to get the 10% defense buff and also guarantee that you can kill off a level 1 unit sitting in the back who has a hard time getting hit by direct attacks. Here's my Kuvara 15 team. Just from my relic slaves, I'm getting a total bonus of 10% crit chance, 20% crit damage, 8% HP, 14% attack, 15% defense, 15% less damage received from critical hits, 20% more healing, and 2% more skill damage. One thing regarding your relic slave is that to keep in mind about their level and passives. In lower stages, level 90 units are going to struggle to get one shot, and we really want these units to die as fast as possible. So if you have an SSS level 105 BAM, it may not be the best idea to use him even if he has a high level personal relic. In the team I'm using, everyone has to die by around turn 6 or my card order messes up, but luckily all my relic slaves get one shot by any hit they take. You may not want to use units like Liddy or White if they have their passives leveled, since they may live for too long. Another unit I want to talk about is Kun. In the perfect scenario, Kun is great, but we won't always get that. At level 90, Kun struggles to get one shot in any stage because he has elemental advantage. He has a 50% chance to block a hit, which is going to allow him to survive if he does. He might get healed back up before he gets the chance to die, and he needs to die twice to really kill him. This encourages us to put him in a spot where he's more likely to get hit, but that means that there's a chance that he may not even get to buff your team at all, so keep this into consideration when adding Kun to your team. Now let's talk about each individual stage. Each of the 3 methods I've shown you can all be used to clear a stage if you have the right gear, but certain methods might be better for any one given stage. This is because of 3 things: enemy count, enemy stats, and the HP thresholds each stage has to revive the ads. In stage 13, we're going to have one ad that can only revive at 3 different HP thresholds, but the boss is going to have a lot lower stats than other stages. Note that just because it can revive at 3 different points doesn't mean it will. It may only revive once or twice. Now, because of these factors, the Besties and HP tuning method may not be the best option since they rely on getting attacked by the ads, so you might be better off trying to brute force it or to just skip the stage by manualing it and trying higher stages. The higher the stage you do, brute forcing it may become harder, and on the other hand, the two other methods are going to become more consistent. This is because in stages 14 to 15, the bosses is going to have higher stats, but 2 adds that revive at 4 and 6 different HP thresholds. More adds means that there's going to be a higher chance that there's at least one add alive, since we may crit on one but not the other, or one add may block a hit but not the other. And that's it. Thanks for watching. I hope this guide has helped you out, and let me know if I missed anything I should have included. See ya.